Bonjour, my crafty peeps. Welcome to What the Craft. If you don't already know me, I'm Marie, an American living in Portugal. I'm addicted to crafting, and these are my quick weekly updates. This week, I was in Lyon, France. Rob had to go to Paris for work, and he only had to be there for one day. And originally, I was going to go meet him in Paris, but then we decided we would go to Lyon because we'd never been. And Lyon is not only the food capital of France, but it is also considered the silk capital of the world. So between the two, there was loads to do. It was hard to prioritize. So I basically only did shopping, looking, learning based on where we were eating and drinking. So I learned that the history of silk originates in Lyon back in like the 1400s with King Louis the Eighth, I think. And he was trying to reduce their dependence on Italy's luxury commodities. And I won't bore you with more details because I will let you figure it out or look it up in case you want to go to Lyon. We were only there for the weekend. We got in on Friday afternoon, had a food tour. So Saturday was basically the only day that I could explore fabric and the history of silk, or so I thought, but I'll get back to that later. I basically only went to fabric stores between us eating and drinking. The first couple that I went to was Coupe Coupon, which for those who don't live in Europe, or maybe, I mean, I don't know if it exists anywhere else, but I'd never heard of it before moving to Europe. Is coupons tend to be pre-cut fabrics and they usually tend to be 3 meters. So this store had a lot of fabrics that were hung on hangers and it was well organized. It wasn't overly crammed. I successfully made it out without buying anything. And then just a couple blocks away, or not even a couple, maybe a half a block and a half, was this store, really adorable, called Pom Pom Girl. And it had fabric, it had yarn, it had lots of notions. I really wanted this zipper that I saw there. They had these great metallic zippers. I'd never seen them before. And I wanted it for the bestie bag that I keep threatening to make this year. However, I haven't really decided what fabric I wanted and I can't decide if I want to make the medium or small or the medium or large. So I just didn't buy a zipper. So that was two stores down, didn't buy anything. And then later that day, we were in the Red Cross district and we went to La Maison des Canuts, which is the house of silk workers. Again, I apologize for pronunciation because I can barely pronounce things properly in English, which is my first and basically only language. I did study abroad in France for a semester, but my French pronunciation, see, I can't even pronounce pronunciation, is going to be complete shit. Okay, but that out of the way, we went to the Red Cross district, which was great for bars and food. And as I said, I went to La Maison des Canuts. It was only €3 to get in, and it's kind of like a museum. It was very small. I wouldn't go out of my way to go there. However, if you're in the neighborhood, which was also known for the silk workers, then nearby, I went to this place called Lyon Tissues, and that's where I ended up buying a piece of fabric. Okay, I should rewind and say, because it was anniversary, Rob said I could buy all the silk I wanted within reason. I was really hoping to get some block screen silk. I wasn't sure what I was going to make with it, but I had been watching videos about it and I fell in love with the idea. However, none of the fabric stores that I ended up going to had any block print silk. And so it's probably for the best. I did end up with this piece of silk. It's just black. It was in the remnant bin, 2.8 meters, so 28 euros. I love silk and I love to wear silk. And I always joke that if I had all the money in the world, I would probably just wear silk all the time. What I will make with that, I'm not sure. I I definitely want to use it to toile something that I have been wanting to make. I don't have an exact pattern, but I've been dreaming about this like bias cut tank top. And if anybody has patterns, suggestions for that, let me know. I had gotten this really expensive piece of silk back in San Francisco, and I got it at Britex. It's metallic, it's very soft. A friend of mine had got me a gift certificate for $35. And when I was leaving San Francisco, I was like, I've got to use this gift certificate. I had it for like 8 years. And because Britex is such a precious store, I could never decide on what to spend it on. So this piece of fabric, it was with the gift certificate and being a remnant and being on sale because they were having a remnant sale. I still think I paid money for this piece of silk. So I've been really precious about what I'm gonna make with it, and it's different on the inside, which is rare. But I think that I will use this to twirl something for this before I make this, and then I might make myself some silk pajamas. The other place I ended up buying stuff was Mercerie Care, and they were 2 stories. They had a great selection of fabric. I think it was mostly a fabric store, but they also had a great selection of bag making materials. And again, if I had had my act together, I could have picked up supplies for the bestie bag. However, I got really boring things there. I got 10 meters of waistband interfacing, which, if you've never seen this before, the stuff is great. I also use it a lot for straps, and it just saves you so much time cutting it. And then I got some Dylon, more Dylon dye pods, because I love these things. The other thing that I went to was I stumbled upon Rocher Soirée, and they had a store near where we were having lunch that had a lot of silk accessories, such as ties, cravats, and they had this silk worm farm in the back. And I had never seen silkworms. Oddly, I thought silkworms were a little smaller than that. Truth be told, they were a little creepy, but it was fun to see. And then they happened to give me a brochure so that I was able to find this museum, which happened to be open on Sunday. Luckily, it was in the same building as my hotel. Not sure how I missed it, but it was the highlight of all the things I did craft-wise in Lyon. They have a selection of this woman's mother's garments, and I think the woman's name is Lily Gamon, and probably like a dozen or so. And that was just great to see that in person. And then it talked also about how Lyon is on the forefront of high tech fabrics as well. To summarize, I would go back to Lyon. Rob and I talked about maybe moving there. However, I think if we moved there, we would both get gout. So I'm going to say we'll visit again. We'll learn more about silk. I would like to go to the atelier that they have because that's where you can see them block printing the silk. I'll be in Valencia, Spain next week. So if you've got crafty recs for me, drop them in the comments. I will also be eating and drinking there. Thanks for watching. See you next week. And in the meantime, craft on.